I don't think I needed this, but anyway, I guess it is needed for the recording. Yeah. All right. So, as Shruti mentioned, so this talk is going to be on the communication complexity landscape for perfectly secure MPC protocols. So the goal is not to sort of go and show you the thank you slide. So since only 3 of you are there, just stop me at any point when you have question, right? And it's basically this talk is based on several works that I have done in the past and recently. So we don't need to cover everything. It's just for the like the recording purpose, but I guess most of you know what MPC is, right? So MPC at a very high level, it allows a bunch of parties to do a secure computation on their private inputs in a way that nobody learns nothing but the output itself, right? So a little bit in details, you can assume there are n parties who are geographically apart and they don't trust each other, and the distrust is modeled by a centralized adversary who can corrupt some of the parties, and the other parties who are not controlled by the adversary are called the honest parties, and they have absolutely no idea who the corrupt parties are, right? And their goal, everybody has their own private input. Let's say Pi has Xi, and they want to jointly compute some function f on the private inputs of all the parties correctly without leaking anything beyond the output itself, right? I guess I'm going to skip these things. You all know about this. And currently, as you know, it's, of course, the theory of MPC is enriched by so many fantastic works starting from 1980s. And currently, MPC has also turned to an applied technology, right? So there are some specific companies who are building just applications and softwares based for MPC, right? So yeah, I mean, there are lots of examples where MPC had been used in practice. So I think most of you know about some of these great applications of MPC. It's again not theoretical; they had been used in practice, and so the Boston thing about the pay disparity had been already been used, right? So as many of you already know, and right, then it had been used to train models on private medical data, and then okay, so something is wrong with respect to this. I will not use it. Okay, this is something new which actually we have also contributed to. This is in terms of building an online sexual assault reporting system, which is called secure escrow system, right? This is to sort of detect the repeated perpetrators and create pathways to support victims. So basically, we are trying to use the power of collectiveness, right? So for instance, you can think about any organizations, including academic organizations, and you know that for every university, it's mandated by the government of India that you have a committee where people can report their complaints in case of any sort of exploitation. It may not be just sexual, but any sort of exploitation. Right? So there could be, in academic settings, it's easy to relate for us, if there is somebody who is in an influential position, right? So the victim will be typically very, very scared to go and report. But if the victim knows that there are more people who are exploited by the same person, right? And all of them are reporting together, then they find strength from this collectiveness, right? So that is exactly what we are trying to offer in a secure way. So what we are doing is that if there is a committee and then they typically have one single person, and these people either goes and report them verbally or they give a written complaint, but anything, all about the complaint, like including the perpetrator ID, the exact nature of the exploitation that has happened, everything is known, right, to the committee or the single person, whoever it is. And then it has the risk of sort of getting leaked somehow, probably, most likely, probably also to the perpetrator, right? And then you know what happens. I mean, there will be a retribution that is coming back, and then the victims will lose faith in the system, and nobody is going to report it in the future. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to do a decentralization here. We'll have a bunch of sort of escrows, and then when a complaint is registered, it goes in a secure way. Let's say we use secret sharing, for instance, right? So everything about the complaint is secret share amongst those escrows. And then when more complaints comes in the picture, and then we do sort of this matchings, right? Matching in terms of perpetrators. So, and then we try to find out whether there is a collective set, right, who satisfy some sort of revealable conditions. For instance, some victim can say, I want 2 more people to come with me when I'm openly disclosed, right? So, and then somebody else can say, I need 3 more people. I mean, this is against all against the same perpetrator. So when I say a revealable subset, meaning that all those complaints have their threshold satisfied. And then until then, everything happens in a distributed way, in a shared fashion. Okay, so yeah.
Here is there any safeguard, like for example, if a bunch of parties collude and submit like false complaints or reports against some perpetrator, who is it actually a perpetrator?
Right. Yeah, of course so in this system it will be finally revealed. So basically when we get a revealable subset, then we reveal that everything, and then after that the normal verification and all those procedure goes on. So if you see that somebody is really, I mean, they're together colluding and trying to do these sort of things, then we will take care of it outside the system. Then you know that, I mean, after an investigation is complete and everything, right, that it's a false allegation. So you can take actions against it.
The target party won't know which like set of people colluded or conspired against.
Right, but finally when you get a revealable subset, right, you reconstruct it, right? Because you have to finally get to know what are the complaints, and you have to do the investigation, verification, and all those things has to happen. So what we are trying currently is that until you find a revealable subset, so we are trying to basically harness the power of collectiveness, right? Until you find a support, you want like 2 more people to come with you. Until that point of time, nobody knows what the complaint is, against whom the complaint is, right? But when a revealable subset is obtained, then you go ahead with the natural path. You reconstruct, and then further actions are taken. Okay, so this is actually something that that actually got accepted to www, and then after that we have been thinking about, we had prototype implementations and everything. And the nice thing about this actually is that it's independent of the MPC part. Whatever number of parties and whatever MPC protocol you can, framework you could choose, you can just plug in and get that sort of security and things like that. So we have been thinking about how to sort of take it into the next level, and this is the project that I had been working with Silence Laboratories, because they are specialized on MPC technologies. They're building that sort of a thing. So this is what we have been actually working with them. Let's see if this works. Okay, so I guess even this part you may be already aware of, the way we sort of define the security for MPC. You are right. I mean, I think we can skip that part. Okay, so yeah, so typically this is how we define the security for MPC protocols. And with respect to how, I mean, the equivalence between the ideal world and the real world view of the adversary, we can define security in 3 ways: perfectly, statistically, and computationally. And as you know, perfect security comes in the picture when the adversary is unbounded powerful. And there is the view between this real and ideal world, there are like absolutely, the two distributions basically are indistinguishable, totally indistinguishable. So there is absolutely no difference. Okay, and statistically it happens with the distributions are not exactly the same, but adversary is still unbounded powerful. And then you have the computational version, right? And in this talk, I'll be actually talking about information theoretic. In fact, I will be talking about perfect case. I mean, this is the cleanest model that you can think of, and even in that, there are lots of questions, even till now, I mean. Okay, so these are the key complexity measures of MPC. As you have understood, it's an interactive protocol. There are a number of parties who could be sitting across the globe, and they're using some sort of a network, for instance, internet, to talk to each other. And we want to achieve the goal of MPC through interaction, right? So that is why communication round as well as computation, locally the parties are doing some sort of computation, right? So all these are important complexity measures, and all of this we take very, very seriously. When we try to design like really practical protocols, we actually try to take care of each of them. In this talk, we'll be worried about the first one, communication, which means the number of bits which are communicated amongst the parties, right? So we want to minimize that for the obvious reason, because it's going to consume the bandwidth, right? So yeah, so it's a very important feature of any sort of secure and distributed computation, including MPC. You know this part, I just kept it for general audience. You know how MPC is evaluated. So typically we represent the function using a circuit, and for this one I'll be using arithmetic circuit, and that's the trend in perfectly secure protocols. Typically we work over arithmetic circuits. So the gates that we'll be dealing with is addition and multiplication. And again, this is, you are aware of, is that most of the perfectly secure protocols are based on linear secret sharing, like Samir, and therefore the addition gate is sort of free, and we typically measure the complexity per multiplication, right? The communication complexity per multiplication. Okay, so yeah, so we'll be talking about the exact settings, and for that I have brought forth like three things based on which you can define the various models for MPC. So the first is network, right? The parties are connected over a network. So that could be synchronous or it could be asynchronous. I'll tell you how these two networks are defined. And then we can have various kinds of adversaries which can be either computationally bounded or unbounded. We little bit talked about it. And then in terms of capability, the adversary could be passive or active, right? Passive means it's basically just eavesdropping the memory of the parties which are under its control. And active means it can actually make the corrupt parties act in any arbitrary way, right? Then, okay, based on
so for active, like, how do you measure communication complexity?
Yeah, so basically then the adversary can send any amount of information. So it is actually the amount of communication which are done by the honest parties. Yeah, because yeah, in theory they can send any amount of information. Right, so yeah, so in this talk we'll be covering both synchronous as well as asynchronous. And we'll be talking about adversary which is unbounded and active, and naturally the security is then information theoretic. Okay, so even in this setting, in fact, even though you work on just the passive case, even then there are a lot of open questions, right? So I mean, perfect security, as I told you, this is the cleanest model, and you can vouch for it probably. I mean, this is really the cleanest model, and even there are like some fundamental questions still left. I mean, from 1980s, yeah.
So here the subset of corrupt parties can change during the online use of the protocol, or is it fixed?
It's fixed. Okay, so that's another attribute, static and adaptive. We are not talking about adaptive, but But in case of perfect security, there are some equivalence results which actually shows that most of the results which are proven for static security, they follow or extend for adaptive security. So again, it's a very exclusive feature of perfect security. The same thing cannot be said for statistical or even computational. Computational is even more, yeah, right? Khichdi in as, yeah, but perfect security, that holds good. Okay, so one thing that we will assume is that we are having honest majority because perfect security otherwise is impossible, right? So we have to use honest majority minimum. But you will see actually in some cases we need more. So this is the distinction. I guess most of the other things in the previous slide, we know unbounded active information theory we have explained. So it's only the synchronous and asynchronous part which I need a little bit of, yeah, I need to tell you a little bit more. So synchronous basically is nice, right? It's well structured, and so you see the traffic there, right? So every message which is sent will be delivered within a known fixed time. Everybody knows delta, right? So if an honest party sends, actually when for that matter, a corrupted party sends, within delta time, it will be reaching to the receiver, for sure. And messages are not reordered. If I send my message at some time interval, and somebody else sends a later time, right? So this will be sent in the sequence. A message reordering is also not done. So typically in synchronous network, this is what happens. Your protocol runs in a sequence of like delta slots. First delta time is for first round, second round, third round, and so on. And every round it's so well structured. Everybody sends their information to other parties, right? And then receives also, and then does some local computation, and that local computation will give the message to be sent in the next round, right? So it's very well structured, right? But typically the thing is that there are some networks which are of synchronous kind, nice and beautiful, and most of the protocols in MPC are actually designed in that in this model because it's easier to design. But in practice, including internet, which is the most popular communication network, they don't function so nicely. Okay, so when I was doing my PhD, I worked a lot on asynchronous system, and at that time, only theoreticians thought about asynchronous system, no practitioners. But today, in fact, started the trend a few years ago. All industrialists, all like practitioners, MPC practitioners, they actually are talking about asynchronous system, and they're building protocols over asynchronous network. And there are lots of optimization questions are still like left because people didn't look that much for thinking that it's a theoretical model and all that, but now it has become a practice and everybody is over asynchronous network. So it's exactly opposite of what synchronous system offers you, right? So every message which is sent will be delivered, but the guarantee is that it will get delivered eventually. You don't know the time bound, right? What time it will be delivered. Messages can be reordered, so you will get this. You get to see this sort of communication the moment you get out of your IIT men get, right? So to take care of this irregularity, what we assume is that the adversary has the power. I mean, we offer the adversary the power of message scheduling, right? So what it means that even between two honest parties, like the honest party sends a message, the adversary gets to schedule the message, right? The adversary decides when to let that message get delivered to the other receiver. It doesn't see the message, but it can stop that message for some time, whatever it wants, right? And then after that it can send the message. So because of all this, if you see that there is some inherent phenomena that happens in asynchronous network. This is the following scenario. Consider two parties. I'm a sender and let's say Ruth is the receiver. I want to send her something. Now, first initially consider a synchronous network. I send her something and you know that delta is the time bound, right? So within delta time, if Shruti doesn't receive it, she knows for sure that I am corrupt party, right? Because that's a guarantee of the synchronous network, right? So only if I was corrupt, I didn't at all send the message, it can happen that she didn't receive the message by the end of delta round. There is absolutely no other possibility, right? So non-receipt of a message in synchronous network after this interval clearly tells you that the sender party is corrupt. As a receiver, you can take the decision, take that into account in your protocol logic, and then you can use that, right? Whereas in asynchronous network, the same thing will not happen, right? So so first of all, if you consider the same time limit and she doesn't get it, two situations can happen and both are equiprobable. You have absolutely no way to distinguish what has happened. It can happen that I as a sender, I am corrupt and I didn't send the message, that's why I didn't reach you. Or it can happen that I'm an honest party, I have sent the message but it's just getting delayed because the adversary is controlling it, right? So it's totally indistinguishable for her that between these two scenarios. So she's sort of clueless and you can't take this logic into account in your protocol design. So that is why asynchronous networks are typically hard to handle, and design of the protocols are hard as well, but there are other more important things which will come in the next slide. But just to summarize between the synchronous and asynchronous settings, so this is what happens. So in synchronous network, all messages sent between honest parties arrive within some bounded delay, delta. And in practice, if you set, how do you set first of all this delta? So basically you go over all the edges in the network. Like for every edge, we'll have an associated delta. So your delta for the network is typically max of all of those to be on the safe side, right? So you cannot actually afford to take anything else. You have to take max of all this. And because of that, typically this delta turns out to be large. Maybe there's one particular channel in the network which is it's a slow channel, right? It takes, so that channel itself will take the delta to be a high value. So although the remaining channels are all good fast, it takes, let's say, 1 second, just because there is a one channel which takes 1 hour, your delta, the round, that will be actually 1 hour, right? So that is the problem. So the protocol becomes very, very inefficient, right? So, I mean, it can happen probably, let's say, most of the MPC parties are located in India and one party is sitting in, let's say, North America, right? So that particular channel is taking 1 hour, but the remaining things are happening in a fraction of a second. But if you follow the synchronous model, the overall round complexity will be 1 hour. It will go in 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 hour, like that. And if you think of a protocol which requires 100 rounds, then it's gone, right? And you cannot, in that case, set your delta to be small, because then it can happen that you are losing some of the messages, because some honest party would have sent some longer time, but you have set your delta to be very small. So in contrast, if you go for asynchronous network, then you know that every message which is sent by an honest party will arrive, you don't know when, but after some finite amount of time, right? And as I said, the adversary can delay it can do the scheduling. So with this, we factor out this thing in our protocols, and that's why our protocols will be running in a much faster speed in real time. Because here we know that some of the parties will be slow, right? Or may not even send the messages. For instance, let's say you have n parties and 3 of them are corrupt. So typically your protocol, in a protocol, every party would actually wait for just n-t messages. So that is already taken care in the asynchronous protocol, because you cannot afford to wait for all the parties' messages in every round, right? Because if you wait, then what happens? You can get stuck indefinitely, right? Because T of the parties are corrupt and they may not even send the messages, Right? So, if your asynchronous protocol has to terminate, then you will have to design protocol in this way. That at every step, you wait for n minus t parties messages. As soon as you get them, you proceed to the next step. Now, this can actually be a problem because, I mean, this actually brings challenges, is because this n minus t parties may actually exclude t honest parties. Because the adversary is scheduling the messages, it can send the messages of the corrupt parties faster than the honest parties. And because of these things, designing protocols in asynchronous network is complicated. But I'm now talking about the advantages. Because this logic is factored into the asynchronous protocol, it runs much faster. So even though your channels, most of the channels are faster, 1 minute channel, right? Then your protocol will actually go fast and fast, in a very, very faster speed. Right? So think about that 1 minute versus 1 hour. This protocol, asynchronous protocols are typically very, very faster. And it has been, this is a statement which is actually made by industry people who are now using asynchronous network for MPC solutions. So this is what they say. Okay, so I have been trying to sell the asynchronous network, right? But there are positive and negative of asynchronous network. That's because of the inherent challenges I mentioned. So here is the first difference that you would see. So in terms of feasibility, right, how many corrupt parties we can tolerate in these two networks. And now I'm talking about just the setting that we want to talk about, malicious perfect security. Right? So this is a result coming from all the way from 1988. These three people, they saw that any function can be computed with perfect security in the presence of t less than n by 3 malicious corruptions. This is, right, BGW88. Right? The same thing if you want to do in asynchronous network, it requires more number of honest parties in the system. Or in other words, you can tolerate less corrupt parties. So it's n by 4, less than n by 4 corruptions you can tolerate. Okay, it's essentially because of that I just said that for t corrupt parties, you may not be able to listen from them. So you have to go ahead at every step after listening from n minus t parties, right? So yeah, so basically essentially because of that. So you need extra honest parties, or you can tolerate less number of corruptions equivalently. Now I will just show you what is known so far in synchronous network in terms of communication. So,
by optimal you mean there are attacks.
Huh?
By optimal you mean there are attacks.
Yes. So there are some functions which you cannot compute. Yeah, there are some adversarial strategy which you can design and. Okay, so now let's move on to the communication complexity of, now you know how many parties you need, right? And then let us now see what is the communication complexity status.
The counter-example functions are like something natural, or for instance, if you take specific functions in practice.
Right.
For them, can people bring this value?
So there could be some trivial functions for which, yeah. So it is similar to like other, yeah. So you can do basically the characterization. There are some trivial functions which you can compute with that. Yeah. Right. Okay, so let's look at the graph. So this x direction is the year, and this is the communication complexity, and it is in power of n. N is the number of parties, and we are talking about basically the communication required per multiplication. As I said, addition is sort of free all the time. So for per multiplication, and you see there are sort of two lines, right? This thing. Because there are two lines of work so far, right? So as you know, most of you, so the fast protocol is of course BGW88, right? That was the fast protocol in the synchronous network with perfect security, and the round complexity of that paper is order of D. D is the depth of the circuit of any function, right, that you are computing. Now the two lines of work is actually distinguished in terms of the rounds. The blue one is for all the protocols which requires order of D rounds, order of depth of the circuit round. And the second is for or some extra number of rounds, D plus N. Okay. And you can see that this line sort of converged very fast. So you have order of N protocol back in 28. Order of N is meaning that it's a linear protocol, right? So you need only linear complexity per multiplication, which is great, right? And for a long time, actually, we didn't know if this is optimal. Order of N linear is optimal. I'll tell you later, but by a recent paper by Ivan and his student, they have shown that that's sort of optimal for, that's optimal order of N for this threshold, optimal threshold, okay? Now, if the other line of work, so the difference you understood, right? Order of D versus D plus N. Just think about some circuits which are constant depth, but the number of parties are hundreds of thousands. Then D plus N actually would matter, okay? And it's in that line, you see that the order of N has been taking a lot of time, right? So after BGW, there was one paper in 2000, then 11, then 21, it's like 10 years of gap. And finally last year, it's still 2014, so, 24. So in 2023 Eurocrypt, we have given the first order of N protocol while also maintaining the round complexity to the order of D, okay? Yes. We actually tried to also optimize the free terms. So typically the communication complexity will be of the following forms, the order of circuit size, I mean the multiplication gate times N, plus there will be some term which is dependent on just N, right? We tried to also bring that down because that will tell us that when the protocol is linear time, for what size of circuit onwards, right? It's linear time. So we tried to optimize even that one, and that actually got reduced to the problem of broadcast, I mean communication complexity of the broadcast. So in the prior paper, I mean in TCC 2023, we first optimized the broadcast because that was contributing to the free term. Yeah, so this is what I was telling you, that people stop at order of N. Can we go beyond, right? So natural question, very natural question. And in this paper, they have actually shown that it's optimal for the optimal complexity. Again, if you go for non-optimal resilience, let's say 40 plus 1, then you can design constant. So there are protocols based on packed secret sharing, which can do that. Right, so this is the state of the art for synchronous. Now let's move on to the asynchronous communication complexity landscape. And this is how it looks like. So it started back in the stock paper of 1993, and then it took quite some time. And this is again, the last paper was quadratic back in 2010. That's again our paper. And done during my PhD, and I had been trying to actually during my PhD thesis itself, I have been trying to get a linear protocol because synchronous, I just showed it in the previous slide, 28, although with order of D plus N round complexity, but they had attained linear. So there was a big question back then, like in asynchronous, can we also get linear complexity? So I didn't succeed at that point of time. I came back to that problem in between, but could not solve, right? Finally, in this year's Eurocrypt, we had solved that. And so after 14 years, you can see that the fast linear protocol in the asynchronous setting had been obtained. And in fact, we have also improved the running time of the protocol. So in asynchronous network, you don't have this concept of rounds, so we call it as like running time. So earlier protocols actually took D plus log N, and we took just order of D. So yeah, this is what it is. And again, the same question you can ask, whether this complexity is optimal. So nobody knew, and until this point of time, and most likely you will see the result in next year's crypto. We have the answer right now. Okay, so what I plan to do is, yeah, just stop me whenever you want, because I don't think we can cover. It's a like a lot of lots of slides. It's I think I gave 3 talks in a series in Japan on this, and so all the slides are there. I will stop whenever the time is up. Yeah. So I actually wanted to give the high level picture. Now you know where, I mean, what is the state of the art, and actually there are some open questions that I can tell you if you are interested. So one can actually still look at, like, if we can get sublinear complexity at the cost of relaxing, because this optimality is proven with respect to the optimal resilience. So the only way you can get suboptimality is either in terms of relaxing the resilience or by relaxing the security. Okay, so security again, what are the ways you can do? So first of all, resilience, you can go for 40 plus 1. Beyond 30 plus 1, right? You can, no, so this is 40 plus 1 already because it's asynchronous network. You can go beyond this optimal resilience and try that out. It's not easy. It's not easy. Other ways you can think about relaxing the security. For instance, here we are talking about actually perfect security. I have not explicitly said, but guaranteed output delivery also. We want in the end of the protocol, everybody should get the output. That's guaranteed output delivery. But you could opt for abort security, right? Wherein the adversary gets the output, but the honest parties may not get it. So you can think about that sort of relaxation and can still think about going for sublinearity. So those are actually still open. We can, and sublinear protocols like constant protocols, and of course, I mean they'll be very nice to have it.
How about statistical security?
It doesn't change. Yeah. Actually, I'll have to think. So what we have proven is for perfect security, and we have also proven that for abort. So even perfect security and abort combination doesn't allow you to go beyond linear. Statistical, I'll just check. Yeah, I can comment right now, but I think it should be able to do that. But in the statistical also, this is what we know, linear protocol. We don't know better. By the way, but in statistical, the threshold gets changed. It's no longer 40 plus 1, it's 30 plus 1. Yes.
So you mentioned back secret sharing being used, but back secret sharing is typically used to improve computation, right? Like communication.
Communication also. Yes. Yes. So I don't know what you have in mind and what I have in mind. There are this terminology has been used in many different places. So what you have in mind?
So what I have in mind is where like back secret sharing just helps you reduce the communication per party. You're just like doing the computation combined on a vector now that you've back shared. But it comes at a price of like communicating more or more randomness. Something it comes at.
Okay. So this is what. So you know what summary sharing is, right?
Yes.
So typically we just plant one secret. Yeah. Let's say in the 0th position. So here we will increase the degree. Okay. We'll increase the degree because we have the same number of corruptions, right? So we'll have to protect those extra secrets. Let's say you place it at 0, -1, -2, and all those positions. Let's say you pack some d number of secrets. Then we'll make the degree as d plus t, the same polynomial.
So that is fine. The reason I feel communication increases because some of the operations that are like free in the regular shares, that you need communication here, right? Like
no, we don't need, because it's still like a one polynomial. It's just an increased degree, and everybody is still getting only one share. Okay. Right? So first party is getting the same polynomial evaluated at 1, 2, and second party is getting at 2, like that. So it's basically at the cost of the previous instance. But then in the same polynomial, you have actually packed many secrets together. So what is complicated right now with respect to this packed secret sharing is doing multiplications.
Yeah.
Right? You have a vector planted at, let's say, -1 to minus k position. So you have planted k secrets. Then you have another polynomial where the secrets are planted in the same positions. How do you do multiplication? The same multiplication that you used to do earlier, like this beaver streak and all those, they don't work. And then there are other challenges like, so for every layer you will have to do this sort of things right now. So let's say you know how to handle these two. And this
Reorder and
yes, all those permutations and all those things comes in the picture because you know, circuit is I mean this output can be multiplied with
that is why so we use packed secret sharing in some is not set up. There it turned out like for some of the things that actually require lesser communication in the regular world.
I see.
That turns out to be more because of these things. We need to do reordering
right.
To get into the right form.
Right. Okay. So the permutation part somehow we do it at the same cost as that of the multiplication. Yeah.
And sometimes you need to like keep switching between regular shares and packed.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But anyway, so those are the open questions with respect to that slide. And yeah, I think I will be talking mostly about these bold ones, although we had this recent contribution in the synchronous network as well. But in this talk, I thought of just focusing on the works in the asynchronous network.
So how does the scenario look if you allow broadcast?
Where in synchronous?
I'm assuming is like without broadcast, right?
With broadcast? No. So we basically we don't assume anything. Like it's a just point-to-point channel, and then we have our own. We build actually a broadcast protocol. So async, we don't assume anything that apart from the pairwise private and secure channels. Because like I said, we wanted to improve the other parts as well, and that needed us to sort of design our own custom-made broadcast protocols. Okay, so should I go on? I mean, this is fine. Okay, fine. Then I'll just move on. I think we started slightly late, 5 minutes late. So this is actually one of the main primitives that will be getting used, right? And I don't think we can understand more than this, but this is one part that I'll focus on. And so it's a very important sub primitive for designing asynchronous MPC protocol. So I guess verifiable secret sharing you may be already aware of. This is just an asynchronous version of it. So you have a dealer, and phase-wise it is like two-phase protocol, sharing and the reconstruction. In the sharing phase, the dealer has a secret which it wants to distribute amongst a bunch of parties, and in the reconstruction, basically all of them needs to be combined so that you get back the secret, right? So the properties that you would need are as follows. So first is called the validity. If the dealer is honest, then the protocol must terminate. You need termination property, right? And in the end of the reconstruction phase, all honest parties must output the same secret as that of the dealer. Secrecy, it's defined for the sharing phase. So what we want is that end of the sharing phase, the view of the adversary, if you look at it, that must be independent of the dealer's secret, right? So whether the dealer's secret is S or S prime, the view of the adversary must be indistinguishable. We're talking about perfect security, so perfect indistinguishability, right? And the last property is called binding. Here, it's actually for a corrupt dealer. And for a corrupt dealer, again, the view of the honest parties at the end of the sharing phase must immediately define some secret. Even though the dealer is corrupt, right? It may try to sort of give conflicting information or shares to the honest parties and leave them at a stage that their information, honest parties shares, doesn't define any secret. That can happen. But ABSS must ensure that the views of the honest parties, which includes the shares, right? They must define some secret, unique secret, and the same unique secret must be reconstructed in the reconstruction phase. Okay, so we will have to design that protocol, of course, an EVSS protocol, and little bit of background that we need for that is, I mean, typically this, if you think about forget about the verifiable part of it, right? If you just think about secret sharing, typically these are based on summary sharing, which all of you know, right? So the polynomial of degree at most t, right? And then you plant the secret at the 0th position and give basically these shares to the parties. Okay. I think throughout I'm taking 5 parties. That's because, 40 plus 1, I mean, if you assume t equals to 1, then 5 is the minimum number of parties you would need. So that's why I've used 5 parties all the time. So these are some of the facts you know. For summary sharing, if the adversary corrupts any t parties, and in this example 1 party, then the share of that single party wouldn't give you any information about the secret. It will be independent of the secret. But t plus 1 parties will give all the information about the secret, and you can actually recover it through Lagrange's interpolation. Sometimes actually we are in the active world, right? So it can happen that while you are doing the reconstruction, the parties will not give you the correct shares, right? So, but we need to reconstruct it. So that's when we use error correction of, you can interpret summary sharing as a linear code, basically a RS code, right? And you can use the error correction capability of these linear codes to do the error correction part. So, for instance, out of n parties, if you consider t parties to be maliciously corrupt, then this n points that we have on f1 to fn, they define an RS code with message length t plus 1, right? So basically the coefficients of that polynomial, they are the messages, and this is the code, f1 to fn, n length code. And you know this code has a minimum distance of n minus t. Wow, why is that? Because 2 polynomials can have t points to be same, at most t points to be same. They cannot have t plus 1 points to be same, common. So that's why the minimum distance is n minus t, right? And then from coding theory, you can correct n minus t divided by 2 errors. So in general, this is the formula, and then you can use error correction to sort of reconstruct back the polynomial. Even though t bad parties give some wrong shares, you should be able to tackle that as long as this n is large enough. So for our case, n is required to be at least 3t plus 1, and then you can correct t errors. Okay. There is another case, you can just put this n when n is 40 plus 1 in our case. In that case, actually we can correct t errors even though the degree of the polynomial is 2t. So even higher, a larger sort of degree can be handled. It's because of that thing that you have, right? That formula that you have that comes from the coding theory. Okay. After that, I think I'll just stop in 3-4 minutes. There are some nice. This part I think it's nice to understand. So summary secret sharing is fine for passive adversaries. The moment you want to handle active adversary, that's when we need this verifiability part, right? The dealer can be bad and even the parties can be bad in total t, but they can be bad, and then things can go wrong. If you have a dealer who is honest, you ask it to do summary sharing, it will do just the way it is supposed to do. But in like active adversary setting, the dealer itself can be bad. So if you ask it to do summary sharing, it can pick some polynomial which is of not of degree t, it can be of more than degree t, right? So things will go wrong, and that's when this verifiable secret sharing comes in the picture. And in verifiable secret sharing, we migrate from univariate polynomial to bivariate polynomial. Okay, and why bivariate polynomial? This is why this slide is here. It gives some sort of a common information between the parties to verify, and they can actually by that pairwise consistency check, they can identify if the dealer has done something wrong, right? And can make sure that if the sharing phase has passed, then the dealer must have complied to sharing a proper bivariate polynomial. So the way we use bivariate polynomial is this way. So you pick a bivariate polynomial now instead of a univariate polynomial. Again, plant the secret in the constant term 0, 0, and degree that you use is t in both the dimensions, x and at most t, same as in Samir. And then you basically look at the bivariate polynomial in the matrix form, right? So evaluate, so look at this matrix. Okay, the color is, I'll tell you because of the distribution we do. So first row is the S polynomial evaluated at y equals to 1. Like that, all the rows. Similarly, you can look at the columns as well. Now the distribution happens this way. The dealer has to distribute the polynomials this way. First row, first column goes to first party. Second row, second column goes to the second party. The nth row and nth column goes to the nth party. Now I want to disclose something to you. Look at any pair of parties. In general, Pi, Pj, just to give you a, just to be very specific, consider P1 and P2. Now, these two informations which are circled, they are actually common between them. Right? So, if you look at S of 2, 1, P1 has it because it has the row. And P2 also has it because P2 has the second column. And similarly, S1, 2 as well. This is held by P2 because it has the second row. And it is also held by P1 because it has the first column. So now the dealer was supposed to do that. First row, first column should be given to P1 with respect to a proper bivariate polynomial of degree at most t, right? But the dealer might not have done it. But because we are using this bivariate polynomial and because these parties pairwise share some common points, they can now communicate amongst themselves, right? And check with respect to these 2 points. And there's absolutely no leakage happening because both of us are supposed to have this information. So if I'm party P1, I'm sending these 2 values to her if she's party 2, and she will be sending the same thing to me, right? Then we can verify, okay, if we are on the same page, right? And if something goes wrong, then we can complain again, and that the dealer has to resolve. So it will not go unnoticed or undetected if the dealer has done something wrong. This is the reason we migrate from univariate to bivariate. It gives a way to verify, right, the distribution of the corrupt dealer. And the similar here is like, if you look at any T parties receive polynomials, they will not give any information about this, and the secret is. You can actually count it. The number of points the corrupt parties are getting is just t times t plus 1. Whereas the number of coefficients that you will have in a t degree bivariate will be t plus 1 square, right? So you will fall short of one equation. So if you are forming all those linear equations, you will fall short of one equation, and that will give you 1 degree of freedom, which you can use to prove that your secret S is secure. Whereas if you look at t plus 1 parties polynomial, they will actually reveal the entire thing. So all those things will naturally extend for 2 dimensions. I think, yeah, this is this is where I think we can stop. Yeah. One, the linear complexity. This year's Eurogroup paper. What we have done, actually, I'll tell you in 1 minute actually. So what we have done is that we showed that this proper AVSS is not required. We first showed that a weakening of AVSS is sufficient for our purpose, right? So that we call that as weak secret sharing. And then we improve the communication complexity of that primitive, the weak secret sharing. So currently all known AVSS protocols gives linear complexity, meaning that for amortized, if you take in an amortized sense, for sharing one secret, you need order of n communication. right? And what we have done is that for that weak secret sharing, we could go beyond linearity, and we have given constant factor protocol, right? So for sharing one secret, you don't actually need anything, like constant. So that's like really the first time. I mean, in the literature of secret sharing, it has not been done before. Of course, with respect to this packing and things like that, we can do it, but this is with robustness and everything, right? So that is our first contribution, and what we have done is that we have migrated from bivariate to trivariate, and this is the first instance. People always thought that univariate to bivariate, there were reasons I just told you. They were thinking that in terms of power, bivariate and trivariate and probably the higher dimensions will actually not add anything else. This is the first instance we have actually shown that trivariate actually can offer you more power on top of bivariate. So yeah, so that part I didn't get to explain, but that is the key things. We weakened the AVSs, got constant complexity, use this trivariate polynomials for the first time in the literature. At least in this context, at least. I mean, yes, yeah. Okay.